Hello dear chess friends, you're listening to the FIDE-master Nat Petre for chessmasterschool.com, and today I will show you some new trends in the Ruy Lopez opening, and specifically the Cordova variation, which arises after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, bishop c5. We will study a game played in the German Bundesliga between Arkady Naidic, rated 2691, against Golod Vitali, another grandmaster from Israel, rated 2570. Black immediately develops the bishop on c5, trying to play d6 after, and if white continues to develop slowly, black will equalize. It takes the key square d4 under control also, so the topical line is c3 here. As the pawn from e4 is not attacked, white has the time to create a powerful phalanx d4, e4, which arises after he pushes d4. Knight f6, d4, bishop b6, knight takes e5. Now black has two main answers: to castle or to choose a very sharp line after knight takes e5. This was played in a recent game from the European Championship between the grandmasters Nisipanu from Romania and Stochek Jiri from Czech Republic. D takes e5, knight e4. In return for white's active central pawn and white's central domination, black reaches immediate counterplay on f2, queen g4, bishop f2, check, king d1, and c6. If white takes the knight, then black will gain the bishop, and the position will be equal. White continued aggressively. Queen takes g7, threatening the rook. Rook f8. Now probably under the effect of black's preparation, the grandmaster Nisipanu played bishop d3. Black equalized easily here. d5, rook f1, queen h4, knight d2, bishop g4, king c2, long castle, and the draw was agreed 6 moves later. But I want to show you is what could white have played instead of bishop d3. Of course, bishop d3 is a tempo move, you may say, but there's another tempo move which deserves to be calculated. Bishop h6, and now black has two answers. Queen e7 is weaker. Knight d2 threatens to penetrate with the knight on d6. Knight takes d2, bishop d3, and white will simply retake the knight, and then he can simply win the exchange on f8 after queen h7, rook a e1 maybe, and the other rook on f1. So after bishop h6, black has to play bishop c5, defending the rook from f8, knight d2, the same idea, and I believe that black doesn't have reasonable defenses here. For example, knight takes d2, bishop d3, again the knight is trapped, all the squares are controlled by white. Queen b6, king takes d2, queen takes b2, bishop c2, threatening rook hb1, queen h7. White will win at least the exchange, and it is hard to see how black could find a secure position for his king, because his queen side is undeveloped. Another choice could be knight f2, check rook, king c2, of course not knight h1 now because of knight e4 with the huge threats, knight f6, knight takes e5, knight d6 after rook e1, for example, c takes b5, b4, attacking the defender, bishop e5, bishop e7, rook h f1, queen b6, queen h7, d5, e takes d6, bishop takes d6, bishop takes f8, bishop takes, rook takes f2, queen takes f2, and rook f1. Everything is clear now. The pawn from f7 is hanging, and the bishop from f8 will fall. Of course, black can play bishop f5, but he will be a pawn down and with a lot of weaknesses on light squares. After b4, instead of bishop e7, black can try d5 directly. B takes c5, queen e7, rook h f1, knight g4, queen f8, queen f8, bishop takes f8. White has an extra exchange, and if black tries to retake the exchange after knight e3, king d3, knight f1, knight takes f1, king takes f8, knight e3. We have a good example of a good knight versus a bad bishop, which has to protect the pawns. The white rook can be activated along the a file or along the f file, while the black rook is rather passive there. So knight f2 doesn't work either. Queen h4. This was the defensive idea used by black in the game, but in this case white has a wonderful refutation. Knight takes e4, queen takes c4, rook e1, queen d5, king c2, c takes b5. It doesn't matter that black is a bishop up, because his queen side not only is undeveloped, but it hampers black's pieces activity as well. Rook a d1, queen e6, rook d6, a nice, oh sorry, rook d6, nice interference. Black can't take, because after bishop takes d6, e takes d6, white will deliver mate with queen takes f8. Queen e7, rook f6, b4, queen takes h7. White simply starts to gain material. B takes c3, bishop takes f8, queen takes f8, rook ef1, the f7 pawn will fall quickly, rook d8, rook takes f7, queen e8, queen h4, king c7, queen c4, trapping the bishop, b6 and b4. Now everything is clear. I hope you liked this almost forced line, and you'll prepare it in case that you are a Ruy Lopez opening player with the white pieces. Let's return to our main key. So after knight e5, instead of exchanging the knights, black chose to castle, and he will try to use the weakness of the e4 pawn in order to recapture the temporary sacrificed pawn. Knight d2. Now rook e8 doesn't work, because after f4 d6, white can simply take on c6, b takes c6, and bishop c6 defends the e4 pawn. This is why black played queen e8. Of course, in this line, black keeps the control over the f7 pawn as well. Now f4 doesn't work because after d6, knight takes c6, b takes c6, the pawn from c6 is defended, and after bishop d3, black can take on e4 and regain the piece with d5, or he can play even more aggressive. Okay, d5 or f5 here. Even more aggressive with c5, stressing the weak position of the white king in the middle. As you can see, there's no safe place for that king, because black will dominate the a7 g1 diagonal. So after queen e8, white decided to avoid the knight's exchange. Why? Because his pawn chain b2, c3, d4 assures him a space advantage, and as you will see later on, black committed too early the dark square bishop to a passive position, and during the game white will exploit the misplaced position of bishop b6. Knight takes e4, short castle. Here trying to trade some minor pieces, black took on d2, but the knight from g8 have made 3 moves in order to exchange a knight which moved only once. Beside that, white will win another tempo attacking the queen from e8. Knight takes d2, bishop takes d2, d5. Knight e5, queen e6 to unpin the queen, rook e1, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, queen d6. At first sight, black managed to keep a symmetrical pawn structure, which may suggest that he equalized. In fact, white has already a serious advantage here, because black has difficulties to develop his bishops, while the bishop from b6 is completely blocked by the d4 pawn. The bishop from c8 can't be developed on a good square. As you can see, only e6 and d7 are available, which helps only to connect the rooks. It's not a really improvement of the bishop position. Let's throw a to-do list for white in this symmetrical pawn structure. First of all, you have to realize that the rook from e5 assures a sort of space advantage, because f7, f6 means a weakening of the kingside pawn structure, And behind the advanced rook, white can easily mobilize his forces. First of all, white has to play tempo moves, which will not allow black to introduce the bishop b6 in the game. Second, target the h7 pawn with the bishop d3 and queen h5 in order to force black to push his kingside pawns. Bishop d3, queen h5, attacking h7. Third, double the rooks on the e file and keep them flexible, as white will have the possibility to transfer the rooks along the g file or h file. If black pushes his kingside pawns and his pawn structure became rigid, white can start a pawn assault meant to use the space advantage and to open the lines against the black king. Let's see how white did this. Bishop d3. See how active white's pieces are. Three important diagonals are controlled by the pieces with long range of actions, while the rook from e5 dominates also the e file for the moment. Black could have tried here c6 or c5. After c6, bishop f4, h6, queen f6 doesn't work because after bishop g5 it will be a double attack on e7, h6, already a commitment on the king side. The king tends to become vulnerable. Queen h5, bishop c7, rook ae1, bishop e6 for example, and white wins with bishop takes h6, g takes h6, and rook g5, followed by mate on h6 or h7 with the queen. If black tries c5, more ambitious, but black is not prepared to deliver such a central blow. The pawn from d5 will be weak, and of course black is behind in development. Queen h5 again, f5, forced, it weakens the a2 g8 diagonal. Queen f3, c takes d4, rook takes d5, queen c6, bishop b5 to deflect the black queen from the c file in order to use the c4 square. Queen f6, rook e1, king h8, and rook d5. The bishop from c8 has no good squares to be developed, which means that black didn't finish development, and soon white will prove his advantage. instead of playing c6 or c5, black played bishop e6. It looks like black connects the rooks and tries to create a blockade, but the bishop from e6 will also be an attacking objective, and white will use the consequence of this move. Queen h5, g6, queen h6. Black pawn structure already became rigid. White activated his pieces, and it threatens rook h5 because the pawn from g6 is pinned. Black played queen d7 in order to reply with the f5 after rook h5. Rook ae1. Now the bishop from e6 is attacked twice, which means that black is not able to push f6 after bishop g5. So again, black doesn't have time to play c6 and bishop c7. If you try to cut with a vertical line the board in two between the D and D file, you'll see that white is able to create a piece superiority on the king side. And now after g6, this superiority is also justified by the absence of the dark square bishop. Rook ae8, queen h4, again preparing bishop h6, bishop g5, or even queen f6. f6 forced, a new commitment. Rook 5 e2, c6 is already too late. White has another tempo move, bishop h6, rook f7. Now the bishop from e6 is pinned, and the rook from e8 is hanging. f4. White simply threatens f5. If black plays rook e7, for example, then g4, queen e8, f5. The g file will be open soon, and white can use the advantage of assured by the dark square bishop from h6, which means that after the rook's exchange, the g7 square can be deadly for black. Let's see how. G takes f5, g takes f5, bishop c8, rook takes c7, rook takes c7, queen g3 check, king h8, and bishop g7, king g8, rook takes c7, and white will win the black queen after queen takes c7 and bishop f6 check. Again, black has to commit with f5. I think that black resisted for so long because each side has the pair of bishops, and beside a complex of weak dark squares, black doesn't have any other pawn weaknesses. White could have realized here that the major weak spot in black's camp is the bishop from e6. So he played g4. The idea of f takes g4, queen takes g4. Of course, after bishop takes g4, rook takes e8, rook f8, rook takes f8 mate, and if black defends the bishop with rook f6, then f5 with a double pin along the e file and the g file. Once this idea solved, I believe white should be consequent and trying to find a solution based on this point. Bishop d8, bishop g5, queen takes g5. Rook g7. Nice defensive move. I believe white was surprised here that he did everything right and black still have resources, and we can't speak about a bad bishop here because a lot of pawns are present on the board, and it is very difficult for white's light square bishop to attack a pawn like b7, for example. Now white was winning with queen h4. Because black still cannot capture on g4. Let's see how. F takes g4, f5, g takes f5, bishop f5. If rook g7, queen g5 check, followed after king h8 by queen f6, and if king f7, bishop takes e6, rook takes e6, and mate at the next move. So after bishop f5, rook g6 is the only move, rook e5, and black's position is lost. So after queen h4, very good retreat, white is simply threatening to leave the g file and then simply take on f5. And if bishop f7, rook e7, rook e7, rook takes e7, rook takes e7, queen d6 to defend the f6 square, otherwise the white queen will penetrate on f6 and then on e5, and white can simply grab a pawn with a huge advantage. So white didn't continue with queen h4. He played h3, consolidating the pawn, but this makes his task difficult, because black's position starts to breed after this pawn exchange. F takes g4, h takes g4, bishop f7, king f2. The difference from the previous line, if white have played rook e7 here, is that the g4 pawn is weak. Okay, let's put rook e7 on the board and compare this position with the rook on e7 with this position. It is obvious that now the black pawn will be passive on d7 or c8, while now it has an attacking objective on g4. This is why white played king f2. Of course, white dominates the only open file, the e file, and all his pieces are better than the enemy forces, but he must create a weakness, an attacking objective. Rook takes e2, rook takes e2, bishop e6, king g3, h6, queen h6, bishop takes g4, rook takes e5, bishop f5, bishop takes f5, g takes f5. Black's problem are still present, because white has excellent pieces, while the black queen is rather passive. King f3, queen f7, rook e2, threatening to regroup the pieces on the h file, rook g6, queen h4. In such positions with exposed kings, the major pieces activity is the most important factor. Which side managed to coordinate his pieces and start exploiting the exposed position of the enemy king has the advantage. Queen f6, queen h5, queen f7, rook h2, king f8, queen h8. Now black is forced to leave the 6th rank. Queen e5, queen g6, queen b8, king f7, queen b7, king f8, queen c8 check, king f7, queen c7, king f8, queen e2. The white king wants to find a secure home on the queen side. Queen f7, queen e5, queen e8, king d2, queen takes e5, f takes e5. The resulting rook's endgame is won because of the black's weak pawn structure. Black has 3 islands of pawn comparing to 1 island for white. f4, king e2, rook g3, rook h6, rook g2 check, king f3, rook takes b2, rook takes c6, rook takes a2, rook c5, a5, rook takes d5, a4. Always a rook behind will force the black rook to stay in front of the pawn. a3, king f4, rook a1, king e4. Of course, after a2, the white king will hide on d5, avoiding the check on e1. I played quickly through this endgame because white could have won earlier. He builded his advantage one more time, exploiting his superior pieces activity. I hope this lecture was interesting, and you will remember the analyzed variations in your over the board game.